Okay, the third thing you need to do when writing a short film is you need to find your story. And to find your story, I'm going to give you a very precise definition. A story is about someone who wants something very badly, but is having trouble getting it. Now, why do I define story that way? There are a lot of other different ways to define a story, but this is incredibly useful because it forces you to look at the fundamental elements of this 3 to 8 to 16 minute story that you're going to tell. The first thing it forces you to think about is, whose story is it? It's about somebody. Who is that somebody? And more specifically, not just who is it about, but who on screen are you asking the audience to empathize with? Who on screen are you asking the audience to care about? And there's usually one or two people in a short that fill that role. So make sure that you know who that is and track their story and progress throughout those, say, 8 minutes. Even in a short film, that one person who the story is about is going to change in some way over the course of the events of whatever unfolds. That person has been chosen very specially because they are the perfect person to experience this story in terms of their unique character. But most importantly, you structure a story around someone that the story is about who wants something. In other words, any story is driven, the plot of the story is driven by a character with an objective, with a goal. It can be very, very simple, and everything that's important about your film can unfold as a result of them pursuing that goal, and ultimately that goal might not be all that important. But it's very important when telling a story to clearly know what your main character wants, even in an 8-minute or 3-minute scene. To understand what the objective of the character is to understand what's actually driving the plot forward, what is creating a chain of events of one thing leading after another. So make sure that you understand what your character wants. Now, they can't just want something or want something a little. They have to want it very, very badly. For whatever reason, this story is very, very important. It's a very important moment in this character's life. So they have to want this thing desperately, very, very badly. It has to be very, very important to them in that particular moment. And we have to feel that importance, what we call the stakes of the situation. In other words, you have somebody who's pursuing a goal, they want it very, very badly, and they have a clear sense of what is going to happen if they don't get it. Meaning they, both the character and the audience can imagine a good outcome for them pursuing this want and a bad outcome. They can imagine things going well or going badly. And you stir up in the audience as you tell your story anticipation. You stir up the audience's imagination for how things might turn out. The last thing, and also the part of it that really will define why this is a story at all, is why they're having trouble getting it. In other words, there are obstacles. There are people, places, and things. There are forces that are keeping your character from getting what they want. Now, this could apply to a feature like Star Wars, but it also could apply to a particular scene. Just 3 pages of a scene in which, say, a daughter is trying to get the approval of her mother, but her mother will not give her that approval. And no matter how she tries, no matter how she argues, she can't quite get that out of her. That could also be part of a short film. But understanding who the story is about, understanding what they want, why they want it badly, and what's stopping them from getting it is really to understand the core of your story, the nugget of it. If you can, when you come up with an idea for a short, just answer that question for yourself. Who is this about? What do they want? Why do they want it so badly? What do they think is going to happen if they don't get it? And ultimately, what's stopping them? If you can answer all those pieces, you are prepared to tell an actual story. You can actually sit down and start writing it, or you can pitch it to somebody else. If you kind of don't know those things, it's very difficult to navigate writing a story because there are too many options and things become very unclear. And as we'll see later, it can lead to some of the problems that occur again and again in mediocre shorts that get submitted to festivals or student films that end up not working out. The fourth thing you need to do when writing your short film is to think deeply about one of the most important aspects of any kind of drama, any kind of comedy, any kind of thriller, and that's tension. One of the biggest ways that screenplays or short films fail, one of the reasons that festival programmers tell me that shorts don't grab them or don't turn out that well. One of the reasons that people who read screenplays because they're agents or because they're working in a contest, one of the things that makes them put a script down and not read to the end is tension. You have to think about what's creating tension in the audience. And by tension, I just simply mean an audience as they're watching a story. If they are engaged, they're constantly thinking about what's going to happen next. You have provoked in them a sense of hope that things might turn out one way and fear that things might turn out another. So that moment by moment, the audience can constantly be anticipating what's going to happen next and be worried about your main character succeeding or failing. The tension is different than the story and the conflict. A character is busily going about pursuing their goal, as we just discussed. They have their want, but the audience has particular feelings about them pursuing that goal. We may know more than the actual character on screen knows. We may worry about things that the character is not worried about. The idea of any kind of tension, and we'll see this when I break down the lunch date, is to establish quickly, right at the beginning of your short, a sense that things could unfold in one way or another, a sense of tension between how things might turn out well for that character and things might happen on screen that we're hoping for, and that things might turn out in a different way. Sometimes it's just about excitement. We think something really good's going to happen and we're waiting for that to unfold. Likewise, sometimes we sit in our seats full of dread because we sense that something bad is coming. We can't take our eyes off the screen until that thing actually happens or not. And also in comedies, a lot of comedies are built around comic tension, that comic anticipation. Something about what we're seeing on screen just lets us know that some sort of disaster is at foot. Something really funny is liable to unfold. And so we're tense waiting for that to happen. So after you've mapped out your story, after you know what a character wants, think about the audience's experience and think about how you establish that sense of tension early on, maintain it, and build it over the course of your story. The next thing I want you to think about when you're writing your short film is character. In a short, especially if some shorts are only 2 minutes long, some shorts are as long as 16, but there isn't really a lot of time to explore backstory or to explore the complexities of characterization. But a lot of shorts will succeed or fail based on how interesting your main character is, how interesting the characters are on screen. So here are some things to think about when you're building this particular character. You probably have an idea, you probably have, and we've been discussing story, you may even have a way to lock the audience into tension. But who is this person you're going to show us, and who is this person who's going to experience whatever ordeal you have in store for them, even over the course of this 3 minutes? Think about these things. First of all, make that character specific. Not an everyman, not an every woman. Think about them in terms of them being a really specific person. How do they speak? What kind of clothes do they wear? Look for ways to take general or generic choices and replace them with really, really specific choices. Ask yourself, what can the audience see? You don't need to write a whole biography for this character. You don't have to get into their backstory. As a matter of fact, in a short, you don't want to. You just want to pick those 3 or 4 defining characteristics that the audience can see and right away get who that character is. And later on, as they make choices and behave in certain ways, we get it because in just a snap, based on how they're dressed, how they're behaving, a few details of speech, we know everything we need to know about them. So with that in mind, because shorts are so short, because you don't have a lot of time to explore the character in different situations or to show them in their ordinary world, you want to pick those maybe 3 key attributes. Think of those the three best details that you could have about your character that will nail who they are. Imagine your best friend. There's probably something that they do that is so them. That certain turn of phrase, that certain weird mannerism, that a little stutter to their speech, something about that just defines who they are for you. Now, and think about your character that way. Are there a couple little things that they can do, especially early in this short film, that will just define for us, oh, I get who that person is. Lastly, for characterization to be really effective, we have to be able to imagine what this character is thinking or feeling, especially as the beats of the story go forward. So the best way to create empathy for this character, the best way to have the audience feel like they're in their shoes, is to constantly, or not constantly, just at a few key moments, because this is only a short film, you need to give them choices. You need to put them under stress, because when we see them try to solve a problem in a particular way, or when we see how they react to pressure, that will give you the opportunity to really show us who they are. If you want to create empathy in a character, sometimes it could be something very simple. At the beginning of Rear Window, we see a guy laid up with a cast on his leg. Okay, we feel sympathy for that guy. Poor guy, he's got a broken leg. But then Jimmy Stewart suddenly gets an itch on his cast. He tries to itch, but of course the cast is covering his leg, and we could see it's driving him crazy. And every one of us has had the experience of having a terrible itch we can't scratch. So we literally, our mirror neurons are starting to fire, and we feel for this poor guy. And then he reaches, gets this little stick, and sticks it under his cast, is able to get the scratch, and he looks so relieved. Now that little bit took about maybe 20 seconds of screen time. But suddenly, the audience is in that character's shoes. They care about him. They laugh a little. They feel like they're with him. They've gone along with that little tiny experience. If you go to my blog, you'll also see lots of examples of particular shorts and how characterization is utilized specifically to make the whole story more effective.